Hey guys, welcome to Core. Whether it's your first time here or you've been here every single week this whole semester, we want to say welcome. We're so thankful that you would choose to spend a couple hours of your day connecting with Jesus and his people. We pray that God continues to reveal himself to you so that you'll know him like you know a friend. I'm going to start off with some announcements. So the first one is we are in the middle of our Keep Focus Growing campaign. And every year we have some very, very generous donors who decide to match up to a certain amount that our students give during that week. And so this week, from today until Saturday, whatever you give online will be matched up to a certain amount thanks to our donors. And so that'll give us a really good head start before Giving Tuesday. So that's that. Second thing is that on December 10th from 5 to 7, it's a Thursday, we're going to be having another worship night. And this one's going to be more Christmas themed. It'll be the week of your finals. So hopefully you get them all done and get your studying done so you can make it to that. And then the last thing is that we're still doing our brown bag hangouts. And so if you haven't gotten to know people from other cores and you would like to, we invite you to do that by signing up for a brown bag. Once you sign up, someone will contact you and you'll have a person to set up time with. All right, I'm just gonna jump in to today. So I wanna invite you guys each to have something to jot down thoughts or questions on, whether that's a note on your phone or a Google Doc on your laptop or iPad, or it's just a journal. There's an axiom that we use often that reminds us to be note takers. It says, the dullest pencil is sharper than the sharpest mind when it comes to remembering things. It just implies that we could all stand to write things down to better remember them. God wants to bring questions and thoughts to your mind through me, through the scriptures that we read, and through the people around you in conversations so that you'll get to know him better. So set yourself up for success by taking notes. Today, we're going to be answering the question of what would Jesus do in light of tough world events? We've got a global pandemic, an unsettled political climate, and acts tracing back to systemic racism. And so I think the first thing that Jesus would do is praise instead of pout. I'm gonna say it again. Praise instead of pout. I think that's the first thing he would do. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could Jesus sing praises when the world is spiraling and frantic? The reason is that Jesus saw reality, not just circumstances. And he's inviting each of you to see the world and each other the way that he does. And because he invites us to, each of us are also able to praise instead of pout. Think about it. Anyone can complain in difficult circumstances. Anyone can be happy in good circumstances. It seems we're all hardwired to be able to do either one of those. But only disciples can truly praise in tough circumstances. Regardless of how much all the tough issues of our world personally affect you, you can praise. What Jesus requires of us is to choose joy rather than complaining. Each of us has to decide, are we going to assume we have no choice but to give in to what's easy and comes naturally, which is to complain, or are we going to be like Jesus to our world and choose joy? This is what it looks like to be like Jesus in the world today, to look radically different than everyone else that's in it. Jesus has made us light so that in dark times, we shine bright. Paul captures this in Philippians 2. Verses 14 to 16, he writes, do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe, as you hold out the word of life. However, many of us choose rather to dwell with everyone else in darkness. We pout, we choose hopelessness, we choose to be sad because we only see the bad. But if you call Jesus Lord, you're in him. Your life is now hidden in him. And since, as 1 John 1 verse 5 says, God is light and in him there is no darkness at all, we are not to dwell as the rest of the world does in darkness. I want to make sure to define the word praise. It isn't just about acknowledging God's goodness. The disciples of Jesus didn't just sit around pondering God's goodness at home. They went out and spoke of God's goodness to the nations near and far. That means that honest praise is about being agents of his goodness to the world in the face of tough circumstances and issues that try to stall us and paralyze us. Remember, God is still in control and still at work, just as the sun is always shining, whether it's visible or not. So when all you see is the bad, do good. When all you see is brokenness, go and heal. My second point is Jesus would focus on the people around him. Jesus would focus on the people around him. Notice that despite all of the big level issues going on in the first century when Jesus was around, Jesus kept his circle of influence relatively small, and he chose to focus on the preaching of the kingdom of heaven. Those were the two main things he chose to do. We tend to overlook Jesus' subtlety and his concern with the few, and instead often become enamored with world events, with all the large things that vie for our attention. We give them so much of our time and attention, and as a result, end up neglecting the people that are right around us, our neighbors, the people in our classes. We just somehow are able to neglect them. We even actually see this in the Apostle Peter, who fell into that social norm of upholding division between the Jews and the Gentiles, even though Jesus had told him to preach and teach to those from all nations. And it wasn't until Peter heard a voice from heaven in a dream that said, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." That's in Acts 10, verse 15. It's not until then that Peter understood the need to value and pursue all kinds of people around him. So let me make this clear. Any action, attitude, policy, social norm, remark, or group that devalues a human's life stands in opposition to God's heart and his redemptive plan. Peter got scolded for that. And later, actually, he ends up doing the same thing again. He kind of pretends like he didn't know and hangs out with these people and does his things. And anyway, he gets in trouble for it by Paul himself. Very interesting. You should look into it. We are not to perpetuate divisiveness or the neglect of the people around us. We need to focus on people and the kingdom. Tough world events come and they go, but the kingdom is always constant and always relevant, and people are always to be highly valued. It should take up most of our thoughts, the kingdom, and it should mark most of our actions, our pursuit of the kingdom and of people. Chapter 145, verse 13 declares, "Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures through all generations. The Lord is trustworthy in all he promises and faithful in all that he does." Jesus would see what we call obstacles as opportunities. That being said, he would use tough world events and circumstances to point people to God. Times like these actually help people see the world is not ideal and that we all need help. So rather than letting tough issues frustrate you and produce bitterness in you, let God use those to remind you of who he is. He's peace, he's life, and he's love. And then also point the people around you to the peace that surpasses all understanding, to the Prince of Peace. Point people to his joy that exists despite circumstances, and point people to Jesus' desire for all people, despite their race and beliefs, to know him and to be near him. And lastly, Jesus would endure with hope instead of fear. The reality of the kingdom is the only reality. You can either choose to focus on the world as it appears to be or as it really is. Again, think of the sun. Just because it's dark and rainy outside does not mean that the sun is not shining. Those who claim and live as if that were the reality are missing the full picture and are not in tune with reality. So we each have to choose the reality of the kingdom, even when it's not as easy to focus on. When we do so, we'll still suffer and we'll still experience the climate of the world, but we will not suffer without hope. The world is broken. That's true. You see that in the division and the anger around us. But we know the true reality is that Jesus is remaking the whole world, and he's using us to do that. In Isaiah chapter 43, the Lord declares, See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Even when you don't see it, this is what the Lord is doing, and you can trust that he will not be slowed down or delayed, despite what tough world issues are going on. In John chapter 16, after Jesus told his disciples that he was going to leave the world, he comforted them and he said, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Jesus said this. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Again, if you call Jesus Lord, your life is now hidden in him. You are now on Team Jesus, and you share in his victory, despite the troubles that you may face in the world. This is the good news that we're called to share with those around us. When we fear and we act out of fear, we show a lack of trust in God, a failure to believe that he can work amidst trouble, a failure to believe that he has overcome, that he is still doing good work, and that he still cares for us. So I'm just going to close by reading Mark's account of Jesus calming the storm. This is Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. That day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, Let's go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall, which is just a violent gust, came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. The issues of our days are like the storm that the disciples faced. They're real and they have consequences, yeah, but they do not threaten Jesus' power or control. So rather than acting like they are personal attacks or too much for Jesus to handle or able to bring, or you let them bring into question God's goodness, I implore you to live in light of reality. I encourage each of you to read Isaiah 40 this coming week and reflect on how the reality of who God is should affect the way that you live your life. Remember, with Jesus, we always have a reason to praise. With Jesus, we are always to focus on the people around us. And with Jesus, we always have hope. Have a good day.